And so we settle in. You can feel your body beginning to grow heavy, in the most pleasant way, sinking just a little deeper into the mattress beneath you. You now turn together tonight. There is nothing to examine, nothing to understand, only the gentle rhythm of a story. And it's a story about a different kind of heaviness, a different kind of pressure. A story about the immense, gilded cage of the Palace of Versailles. Before we drift too far into its golden halls, if you feel a connection to this quiet place, you're welcome to leave a gentle like or subscribe. Think of it not as a task, but as leaving a soft footprint in the sand before you continue your journey inward. And if you feel so inclined, you might also leave a quiet comment, letting me know which city you're listening from, and what time it is there in your part of the world. It's a pleasant thought, knowing we are all here in this calm space together, even when we are far apart. All right, let the shadows in your room grow numb and soft. Maybe you can hear the faint, steady sound of your own breathing, and together, let's allow the story to begin. The day doesn't start with a gentle ray of sunlight through a window. It starts with a presence in the room. Even before your eyes are fully open, you sense them. Your mates, Alain and Monique, moving with a practiced quiet that somehow makes them more noticeable than a loud noise. The air is still cool, the coals in the hearth just beginning to be stirred. There is no slow, languid stretch to welcome the morning. There is only the ritual. You sit up on the edge of the bed, and the first layer is slipped over your head. It's a simple linen chemise, soft and loose against your skin. This is the last moment of freedom. The last time your body is truly your own. You cherish the feeling for a fleeting second, the way the fabric moves as you move, the simple comfort of it. It's a comfort that will soon be a distant memory. Next come the silk stockings, pulled up over your knees and tied with elaborate garters. Then, the foundation of your public self begins its construction. It's not a piece of clothing. Not really. It's architecture. They bring out the panniers. Two large, basket-like structures made of hollowbone or wicker, and tie them securely around your waist. You now have hips that are 4 feet wide. You glance down at the absurd skeleton you're wearing. It's impossible to walk through a normal doorway like this. But then, nothing about Versailles is normal. Layer after layer of petticoats are draped over the panniers, each one adding weight, building out the shape. The rustle of starched linen and silk fills the silence. And now, for the main event, the corset. You stand up, holding onto the bedpost for support. It's brought around your torso, a stiff, unyielding cylinder of coetal fabric and bone. You take a final, deep breath, filling your lungs as much as you can. It's the last full breath you'll take until tonight. Monique stands in front of you, her knee braced against your stomach to hold you in place, while Anne stands behind, pulling the laces. The pressure begins. It's a methodical, inescapable tightening. You can feel your ribs being compressed, your organs gently but firmly being rearranged. Your waist is cinched to a shockingly small circumference. Your breathing becomes shallow, restricted to the very top of your lungs. This, you are told, is the price of a noble figure, a small price for beauty, a tiny sacrifice for the king's approval. Some historians today argue that women of your time were so accustomed to this feeling that they barely noticed the discomfort, that it was as normal as wearing shoes is to us. Others insist it was a source of constant, low-grade misery, a physical torment that women simply had to endure in silence. As the final knot is tied, you feel quite certain which side of that debate you fall on. The corset even contains a bust, a long, flat piece of wood or ivory, slipped into a pocket at the front to keep you ramrod straight. Yours was a gift from your husband, carved with a rather uninspired love poem. At this moment, it feels less like a token of affection and more like a ruler for your posture, wielded by an invisible schoolmaster. Finally, the gown itself, a masterpiece of silk brocade, shimmering with gold thread and seed pearls, is carefully lowered over the entire construction. It weighs more than a suit of armor. The maids fuss over every fold, Every ribbon. They step back, admiring their work. And there you are, a Duchess, a vision of wealth, power, and elegance, a living work of art. You are also a prisoner, locked inside a cage of fabric and bone, unable to bend, unable to breathe, unable to take a step without careful calculation. The day has just begun, and you are already exhausted. The maids hand you a fan, and it's not just an accessory. It's a vital tool, a tool for communication, a shield for a discreet yawn, and most importantly, a way to create a tiny breeze in the stuffy air of the court. You give yourself a final glance in the silver-backed hand mirror. Your face is powdered pale as a sheet of paper, a stark canvas for the small, black silk patches, the moches, that have been carefully applied. One near your eye means passionate. Another at the corner of your mouth says I am available. It's a coded language everyone understands. Today, yours is placed high on your cheek, signifying simple gallantry. It's the safest, most neutral message you can send. Now you must breathe. Or rather, you must try to. The corset's grip is relentless. It is not a gentle hug. It is a vice. You feel it pressing upwards, squishing your lungs into the top of your chest cavity. Every breath is a conscious effort, a shallow sip of air rather than a satisfying gulp. You can feel a dull ache beginning to spread across your lower back, a familiar companion to these long days at court. It's the ache of a body forced into an unnatural shape, muscles straining against the rigid boning that holds you captive. This garment, this instrument of fashionable torture, is the centerpiece of your existence here. Historians will one day marvel at the construction of these corsets, noting the intricate stitching and the use of holobon, or baleen, to be more precise. It's a flexible, durable material harvested from the mouths of great whales, perfect for creating the smooth, conical torso that is so desired. You've heard whispers of women fainting, or suffering from the vapors, a delicate term for what happens when your body simply gives up from lack of oxygen. It's a common occurrence. Sometimes, it's even seen as a sign of extreme sensitivity and feminine delicacy. You, however, find it deeply inconvenient. There's a strange debate among modern scholars about the long-term health effects of this. Some argue it led to atrophied back muscles, digestive issues, and even skeletal deformities. Others suggest that, since women wore them from a young age, their bodies simply adapted, growing around the constraints. As you feel the stiff point of the busk digging into your sternum, you have a strong opinion on the matter. You can feel your own heartbeat, a frantic, muffled drum against the unyielding wall of fabric and bone. It feels like the corset has a life of its own, a silent partner in a dance you didn't agree to. You turn sideways to exit your chambers, the only way to navigate the doorway with your colossal panniers. Your movements are small and precise, a geisha-like shuffle that is born of necessity. To rush would be to risk tripping on a hidden hem or catching your skirt on a piece of furniture. A cascade of public humiliation you dare not risk. Your steps are whispers on the polished floor. The corridor outside your apartment is already buzzing with courtiers, a river of silk, satin, and powdered wigs flowing towards the heart of the palace. The air is thick with the scent of 100 competing perfumes, a desperate attempt to mask the other, less pleasant odors that cling to the damask-covered walls. You nod gracefully to a passing baron, his own face a mask of white powder, his heels clicking with an air of self-importance. He bows low. You incline your head, a motion restricted by the high, stiff collar of your dress. Everything is performance. Every gesture is calculated. You are acutely aware of your own body, not in a way that feels powerful, but in a way that feels precarious. You are a walking balancing act. The weight of the gown, the restriction of the corset, the sheer width of your skirts. It all combines to create a sense of being perpetually off balance. You are less a person and more a carefully managed object, a porcelain doll that could shatter at the slightest misstep. And as you make your slow, deliberate journey, you feel the pressure not just on your ribs, but on your very being, The pressure to be beautiful, to be graceful, to be silent, to be perfect. The corset is just the physical manifestation of the invisible cage that surrounds every woman at court. It dictates how you breathe, how you move, how you sit, how you exist. It is a constant, physical reminder of your place. A beautiful, agonizing, breathtaking prison. As you emerge from the relative dimness of the residential wing, you step into the full, unadulterated glory of the state apartments, and it hits you, as it does every single time, the sheer, overwhelming, unapologetic opulence of it all. This is not just a palace. It is a statement. It is the sun, brought down to earth and forged into a building. You are walking through a canyon of gold. The walls are not simply painted. They are dripping with gilded carvings, swirls of leaves, cherubs with chubby, knowing faces, and military trophies all intertwined. Light pours in from impossibly tall windows, striking every surface and shattering into a million dazzling fragments. The ceilings are not ceilings. They are heavens. Vast canvases filled with paintings of gods and heroes, all of whom, you notice, bear a faint, flattering resemblance to the king. This is the whole point, of course. You are not just in a building. You are inside the mythology of Louis XIV. Every room is designed to tell a story of his power, his glory, his divine right to rule. The Salon of Venus is a tribute to his charm. The Salon of Mars a testament to his military might. You are currently passing through the Salon of Apollo, the sun god himself, which conveniently leads to the throne room. The subtlety is, well, there is no subtlety. You pause for a moment, pretending to admire a particularly shiny bit of gold leaf, but really, you are just trying to absorb the sensory overload. The sound alone is a symphony of courtly life, the rustle of 1,000 silk skirts, the soft click of heeled shoes on marble, the murmur of gossip spoken behind fluttering fans, and the distant, elegant strains of a string quartet playing something by Lully, the court composer. It's a beautiful noise, but it's a constant noise. There is no silence in Versailles. Silence would imply that nothing is happening, and here, something is always happening. Historians will forever debate the exact cost of building Versailles. It's a number almost impossible to calculate, involving decades of labor from tens of thousands of workers, and materials sourced from all over the kingdom and beyond. Some estimates put it at half of the entire annual income of the French state during the peak years of construction. It was a project of such staggering scale and expense that it nearly bankrupted the nation. But from the king's perspective, it was worth every livre. It was a way to domesticate the nobility, to bring them all under one roof where he could watch them, control them, and keep them busy with endless rituals instead of plotting against him. And you are one of them, a beautiful bird in a very, very large and expensive cage. You notice details that a casual visitor might miss. The floors, for example, they are not plush carpet, but parquet de Versailles, intricate patterns of inlaid wood, polished to a mirror-like sheen. They are stunningly beautiful, but also treacherous. A misplaced heel, a stumble on a slightly uneven plank, could mean disaster. You've seen it happen. A countess near to court once caught her shoe and went down in a slow, ponderous wave of silken petticoats, her wide skirts revealing far more than her ankles. The court, for a brief moment, fell silent, and then came the barely suppressed duress. The poor woman was never quite able to recover from the humiliation. There's also the curious case of the silver furniture. In the early, even more extravagant days of the palace, the hall of mirrors was filled with solid silver tables, chairs, and tall chairs. It was a display of wealth so extreme it bordered on the comical. However, as wars drained the royal treasury, all of it, every last silver chair and candlestick, was melted down to pay for soldiers and cannons. A strange fact of life here. The symbol of wealth is so potent, it can be liquidated at a moment's notice. The current furniture is exquisite, of course, but it's gilded wood. not solid silver. A tiny, almost invisible step down in extravagance that only the old-timers would notice. You feel a sense of profound smallness in these rooms. They are built on a scale meant for giants or gods, not for people, even people wearing ridiculously wide skirts. The doorways are vast, the ceilings astronomical. It makes you feel like a doll in a dollhouse, an insignificant player on a grand stage. And that, too, is part of the design. Only one man is meant to feel truly at home here. And you can feel his presence everywhere, even when he is not in sight. The entire palace is an extension of his will, his ego. You are just living in it. And then, you enter it. The Hall of Mirrors. No gallery desk glaces. Even the name sounds like a sigh of wonder. It is the heart of the palace. Its most breathtaking artery, connecting the king's private apartments to the queen's. It is 73 meters of pure, calculated spectacle. On your left, a row of 17 massive arched windows looks out onto the formal gardens, the geometric perfection of the lawns and fountains stretching out to the horizon. On your right, facing those windows, are 17 identical arches filled with 357 individual mirrors. 357. It's a number that's easy to say, but impossible to comprehend until you are standing in the middle of it. Mirrors of this size were an astronomical luxury at the time, a Venetian monopoly that the French state went to great, and rather shadowy, lengths to break. They lured Venetian glassmakers to France with promises of riches. An act of industrial espionage that the Republic of Venice was rumored to have answered by sending assassins. Whether that's dramatic folklore or sober truth is a point of historical contention, but standing here, it feels plausible. The result of that clandestine struggle is this hall, a place where light itself seems to be trapped, endlessly bouncing from window to mirror and back again. You walk into a blizzard of light. Your own reflection walks with you, then another joins it, and another, until an army of you stretches into an infinite, silent, glittering corridor. You see yourself from every angle, the front of your gown, shimmering as you move, the side profile, with the absurdly cinched waist, the back, a cascade of embroidered silk you can never see yourself. It is the most exhilarating and the most terrifying room in the world. There is nowhere to hide. And that is precisely the point. This is the main thoroughfare of the court. It's where courtiers come to see and, more importantly, to be seen. You are constantly on display. Your every gesture, every flicker of an eyelash, reflected and multiplied for all to observe. It is a room of silent, constant judgment. And then you see him. The Sun King, Louis XIV. He is not the tallest man in the room. In fact, he is famously reliant on high-heeled shoes, a fashion he pioneered for men. But he possesses a gravitational pull that is undeniable. The crowd parts for him organically, a human tide receding from his path. He moves with a slow, deliberate grace, an almost theatrical poise that he has perfected over decades. He is in his late 40s now, a man in his prime, and he carries the entire weight of the kingdom on his shoulders as if it were a light silk cloak. His gaze sweeps the room. It is a practiced, all-encompassing look. He seems to see everyone and no one at once. But you know that he misses nothing. He knows who is here and who is not. He knows who is speaking to whom. He can, with a single glance, raise a family to prominence or condemn them to obscurity. A slight, approving nod from the king can make your career. A frown, or even worse, to be ignored completely, can be the end of you. Your heart, already constrained by your corset, gives a nervous flutter. You sink into a deep, graceful curtsy, your massive skirts blooming around you on the floor like a giant, overturned flower. It's a move you have practiced 1,000 times, a complex ballet of balance and control. To do it clumsily is a social catastrophe. You hold your breath, your eyes fixed on the polished floor, until he passes. You feel his eyes pass over you. It's not a personal look, it's an inspection. He is assessing you, Your gown, your posture, your adherence to the impossibly high standards he has set. It's a fleeting moment, lasting no more than a second, but it feels like an eternity. He moves on. You rise slowly, your knees trembling just a little. He did not frown. That is a victory. The tension in the room is palpable. Everyone is performing for an audience of one. They are laughing a little too loudly, gossiping a little too intensely, standing a little too straight. It's a peacock parade, and everyone is displaying their finest feathers, desperate for a sliver of the royal attention. You see a duke, the man of immense power and learn, look positively giddy because the king asked him a simple question about his hunting dogs. You see a baroness on the verge of tears because the king's eyes slid right past her without a flicker of recognition. This is the currency of Versailles. Not gold, not land, but royal favor. A glance, a word, a nod. It is a fragile and fickle economy, and you are all gambling with your futures, every single day. And here, in the Hall of Mirrors, under the impossible light and the weight of 1,000 reflections, you feel the stakes more acutely than anywhere else. You manage to find a relatively quiet spot near one of the enormous windows, pretending to be captivated by the geometric precision of the gardens below. The string quartet is playing a sprightly gavotte, and the murmur of the court provides a constant, humming backdrop. You fan yourself slowly, projecting an image of serene composure. You are a duchess at leisure, a perfect pearl in the oyster of Versailles. But beneath the serene surface, a familiar and unwelcome storm is gathering. It starts as a whisper, internal signal, so faint you could almost ignore it. It is a gentle, barely there pressure in your lower abdomen. The first hint, you try to dismiss it. You take one of your shallow, corset-mandated breaths and focus on the conversation happening nearby, something about a disappointing boar hunt. You smile faintly, as if you are listening, as if you care about the boar. But the whisper doesn't go away. It grows, slowly but surely, into a distinct and undeniable sensation. It is the voice of your own body, speaking a language that cuts through all the noise and protocol of the call. It is the language of biological necessity. Your bladder, an organ with absolutely no respect for royal etiquette, is beginning to make its presence known. This is the central, unspoken anxiety of life at Versailles. For all the glittering gold and shimmering silk, for all the poetry and philosophy, for all the elaborate performance of divine grace, you are all still fundamentally human, and the human body has needs that this magnificent palace seems to have completely forgotten to account for. The feeling is no longer a whisper. It's a clear, polite statement. It says, "Excuse me, I will require some attention in the not-too-distant future." A fresh wave of courtiers enters the hall, bringing with them a new blast of perfume and body heat. The room feels smaller, the air thicker. Your composure, which you have so carefully constructed, begins to feel fragile. You subtly shift your weight from one foot to the other. A tiny, almost imperceptible movement. You press your knees together slightly, a subconscious gesture of containment. You are now operating on two levels. On the surface, you are the Duchess, cool and unflappable. But underneath, a frantic calculation has begun. A mental map of the palace, a frantic search for possibilities, for escape routes. The panic is a slow boiling thing. It's not a sharp, sudden fear, but a creeping dread. You know, from bitter experience, how this escalates. The polite statement will become a firm request, then an urgent demand, and finally, a screaming, five-alarm crisis. Your entire day, your entire being, is now beginning to revolve around this single, primal need. The king's gaze seems trivial now. The gossip of the court is meaningless noise. The only thing that matters is the rising tide within you. This is a side of Versailles that the poets and painters conveniently leave out. They capture the glory, the power, the romance. They do not capture the quiet, desperate face of a noblewoman trying to figure out how to relieve herself without causing a national incident. Historians, in their more candid moments, acknowledge this. They call it the Great Paradox of Versailles, a pinnacle of civilization plagued by a fundamental lack of sanitation. Some even argue that this constant, low-level physical stress and discomfort contributed to the notoriously volatile and dramatic nature of court politics. It's hard to be diplomatic when you are in a state of escalating physical distress. You look around the hall of mirrors. You see the smiling faces, the elegant bows, the fluttering fans, and you wonder, how many of them, how many of these serene, godlike creatures are currently engaged in the same internal battle as you? The Duke with the booming laugh. Is he shifting his weight for a reason? The Countess examining a ceiling fresco with rapt attention. Is she truly admiring the art, or is she just trying to distract herself? You feel a strange sense of solidarity and isolation all at once. You are all in this together, trapped in this beautiful, impossible place. But you are also utterly alone in your own personal, silent, and increasingly urgent crisis. The gavotte ends, and a new, slower saraband begins. The music feels mockingly calm, a placid soundtrack to your inner turmoil. The sun streams through the windows, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air, each one a tiny spotlight on your growing predicament. The time for standing still is over. Action is required. The polite internal request is swiftly becoming a firm demand. You need to move, to find an exit, to begin the complex logistical operation that is required for this seemingly simple act. You detach yourself from the window with a graceful nod to no one in particular, as if you have just remembered a pressing engagement in another part of the palace. The first challenge presents itself immediately. The crowd. The hall of mirrors is a river of people, and you need to swim upstream. This is where the true tyranny of your dress becomes apparent. The panniers, those wicker and hollowbone cages at your hips, make you a battleship in a sea of canoes. You cannot simply slip through a gap in the crowd. You must carve a path. You turn sideways, your default mode for navigating the world, and begin the slow, deliberate shuffle. Your skirt, a vast expanse of silk brocade, sweeps a wide arc around you. It's like trying to pilot a small boat with an enormous, unwieldy sail. The fabric whispers and rustles against the floor, announcing your every move. It catches on the jeweled hilt of a passing courtier's sword. You stop, untangle yourself with a tight, apologetic smile. He bows, completely oblivious to the klaxon horn of panic that is sounding in your head. Every step is a negotiation. Pardon, monsieur. Excusez-moi, Madame la Comtesse. You murmur the pleasantries, your face a mask of polite determination. Inside, you are screaming. Getoutoftheway. The weight of the gown is a constant drag, a physical manifestation of the social burdens you carry. Historians estimate that a formal court gown like yours could weigh anywhere from 10 to 30 pounds, depending on the richness of the fabric and the extent of the embroidery. It's a workout, wrapped in a fashion statement. You can feel a faint sheen of perspiration on your brow, which you discreetly dab with the edge of your fan. You try to move with purpose, but not with haste. Haste is vulgar. Haste suggests desperation, and desperation is a crack in the perfect facade of nobility. So you drift, like a galleon with a broken rudder, through the glittering human sea. Your eyes scan the room, not for friends or rivals, but for your maid, Elise. She is your only hope, your co-conspirator in this intimate and humiliating mission. You catch a glimpse of a rival, the Duchess de Beaumont, holding court in a small circle of admirers. She sees you struggling to make your way through the throng and gives a tiny, almost imperceptible smirk. She knows, or she suspects, in the shark tank of Versailles. Any sign of weakness is blood in the water. You lift your chin a fraction of an inch higher and pretend you didn't see her. The sheer impracticality of your attire is something scholars still debate. Was it purely a display of status? A way of saying, I am so wealthy and important that I can afford to be completely immobilized by my own clothing? Or was it a form of social control, keeping women decorative and constrained? The truth, you suspect, is a bit of both. Your dress is both a symbol of your power and the instrument of your paralysis. There's a bizarre little footnote in the history of court fashion. The occasional trend for stroller gowns or robes a la polonaise, which had a system of cords and pulleys to hitch up the skirts for walking. It was a brief, fleeting moment of practicality in a century of glorious absurdity. Your gown, the nurse, has no such features. It is designed for standing still and looking magnificent, not for navigating a crowded room on a time-sensitive mission. You finally spot her, Elise. She is standing near the entrance to the Salon of Peace, her face a calm, professional blank, but her eyes are alert. She has been watching you, waiting for the signal. You catch her eye and give a tiny, almost invisible nod. It's a signal you have perfected over years, a signal that says, "It is time." Code red. Elise nods back, just as subtly, and begins to move. Her path is much easier than yours. Unburdened by a 4-foot-wide skirt, she slips through the crowd like an eel. Her simple grey dress a shadow among the vibrant peacocks. She is your pathfinder, your operative, your partner in crime. The first, most difficult step of the operation is complete. Contact has been made. Now, for the even more difficult part, finding a place. Elise is now a few steps ahead of you, a small, grey ship clearing a path for your majestic, unwieldy galleon. Her presence gives you a sliver of comfort, a tiny island of professional calm in your sea of rising panic. The internal voice is no longer making polite requests. It is now issuing stern, non-negotiable directives. Time is running out. You follow Elise out of the blinding light of the Hall of Mirrors and into one of the adjoining salons. The crowd thins slightly here. People are gathered in smaller, more intimate clumps. Their gossip a little more focused, a little more vicious. You continue your slow, regal procession, your eyes darting around, scanning the environment not for its beauty, but for its tactical possibilities. A heavy tapestry depicting a mythological battle, perhaps a deep-set window alcove, shrouded in velvet curtains, a definite possibility. A forgotten corridor leading to the servants' quarters. That would be the jackpot. But as you scan the magnificent, gilded walls, a cold, hard fact settles in your stomach, a fact more uncomfortable than the corset. There are no doors that look like they lead to a private room for this purpose, because, for the most part, they don't exist. This is the most baffling, most absurd truth of Versailles. The Sun King, in his infinite wisdom, commissioned the grandest, most glorious palace in the known world, a masterpiece of art and architecture, a symbol of French power and sophistication. And he forgot to include toilets. Or, to be more precise, he didn't forget, he simply didn't consider them a priority. In the vast, sprawling labyrinth of over 2 Jara rooms, there were only a handful of permanent, private latrines. These were reserved for the absolute highest echelons of the royal family, the king, the queen, their children, for the thousands of other nobles, courtiers, servants, and visitors who lived and worked here every day. There was nothing. The concept of a public restroom, a place where anyone could go, simply did not exist. Privacy itself was a strange and fluid concept here. You lived your life in public. You ate in public. You dressed in public. Why should this one bodily function be any different? Historians have long been fascinated by this. It wasn't that the technology was unknown. Castles in the Middle Ages had guard roads. The Romans had elaborate public latrines. But somehow, in this glittering pinnacle of 17th century culture, basic sanitation was an afterthought. The prevailing theory is that the etiquette of the court, the constant performance, was so all-consuming that the base realities of the body were seen as an inconvenience to be dealt with personally and discreetly, not something the state had a responsibility to manage. The palace was a stage, not a home. There were, of course, the chaises per se, or pierced chairs, elaborate chairs with a hole in the seat and a chamber pot hidden below. These were personal items, kept in one's own apartments. To use one, you would have to retreat all the way back to your rooms. A journey that could take 20 minutes or more, a lifetime in your current condition. So what did people do? The answer is as simple as it is unpleasant. They went wherever they could. A dark corner, a secluded staircase, the corner of a courtyard, behind a bush in the garden. The palace, for all its glory, was notoriously filthy. Accounts from the period describe the stench as overpowering, a thick miasma of unwashed bodies, stale perfume, and poorly concealed human waste. The servants were constantly cleaning, but it was a losing battle against thousands of people with full bladders and no official place to empty them. You once heard a shocking, but entirely believable, story about a foreign dignitary who, upon admiring a beautiful silk curtain in one of the less trafficked corridors, pulled it back to get a better look at the fabricant. Well, let's just say he discovered the court's unofficial public lavatory. This is the reality you are now facing. You are a duchess, a woman of immense rank and impeccable breeding, and your only option is to find a dark corner and hope no one is looking. The absurdity of it all is dizzying. You are wearing a gown that cost more than a farmer's entire yearly income. Your hair is a pounded masterpiece. Your jewels are worth a small fortune. And you are, in this moment, no different from a stray dog looking for a tree. The gilded cage has a very, very dirty floor. And the door to that cage, the one leading to your private rooms, feels a million miles away. Your eyes lock with Elise's. No words are necessary. The frantic search in your gaze is met with her calm, reassuring professionalism. She is more than a maid. She is your field marshal in these delicate campaigns, while you are the glittering, vulnerable monarch of your own small crisis. She is the cool-headed general, surveying the terrain and planning the attack. Elise is small and bird-like, with quick, intelligent eyes that miss nothing. She's from a village in Picardy, and she carries with her a raw pragmatism that is a breath of fresh air in the perfumed, artificial atmosphere of the court. She can spot a loose thread on your hem from 10 paces away, can read the mood of a room in an instant, and most importantly, she understands the silent, desperate language of a duchess in distress. Finding her was your one true victory at court. You hired her 2 years ago, after a disastrous incident with your previous maid, a young girl who was too easily flustered, who once dropped a pot of rouge on a white satin shoe just moments before you were due to be presented to the queen. Elise, by contrast, is unflappable. She moves through the palace with a quiet confidence, an invisibility that is its own form of power. While you are trapped by the rigid rules of your station, she can slip through the cracks. She gives you a subtle, almost imperceptible shake of her head. This salon is no good. Too many people, not enough shadows. She gestures with her chin towards a less crowded gallery up ahead. You follow, your heeled shoes making soft, desperate clicks on the parquet floor. Each step is a fresh jolt to your system, a reminder of the ticking clock. The bond between a noble woman and her personal maid, her femme de chambre, is a subject that fascinates historians. It was an incredibly intimate relationship, one that crossed the rigid class boundaries of the era. Your maid saw you without your powder, without your corset, without your titles. She knew your secrets, your fears, your physical frailties. She was your confidant, your stylist, your nurse, and, in moments like this, your savior. Of course, this intimacy was a double-edged sword. A loyal maid like Elise was a priceless treasure. A disgruntled one could be a catastrophe. Maids were a primary source of the gossip that fueled the court. They knew who was having an affair, who was in debt, who had a secret illness. A maid's gossip, whispered in the servants' quarters, could destroy a reputation as effectively as a royal snub. You make a mental note to give Elise that silver brooch you no longer wear. Loyalty must be rewarded. There's a strange, almost comical, detail in the court records about the sheer number of servants required. A high-ranking Duchess like you would have a small army in your household. Maids, footmen, a secretary, a cook, a laundress, but only one or two, like Elise, would be your personal attendants. The ones allowed into the inner sanctum of your bedchamber. The hierarchy below stairs was just as rigid and complex as the one above. You and Elise have developed a whole system of non-verbal cues. A slight flutter of your fan means I am feeling faint. A tap of your finger on your cheek means my makeup needs repair. And the look you are giving her right now, a wide-eyed stare of barely concealed panic, means if we do not solve this problem in the next 90 seconds, there will be a diplomatic incident right here in the salon of Diana. Elise understands. She scans the room with the intensity of a hawk searching for its prey. Her eyes dismiss a cluster of chattering courtiers, glide past a gilded console table, and then they stop. She has spotted something. It's a doorway, partially concealed by a large potted orange tree, another of the king's opulent obsessions. It's not a grand entrance, but a small, unassuming service door, probably leading to a back corridor. It's perfect. Elisa's gaze flicks back to you. She raises her eyebrows just a fraction. There. A wave of profound relief washes over you, so potent it almost makes your knees buckle. Hope. There is hope. Now, you just have to get to that door without anyone noticing you are making a beeline for the servants' passage. You take a slow, coming breath, or the shallow, corseted version of one, and begin to drift casually in the direction of the orange tree, feigning a sudden interest in its waxy green leaves. The performance is not over yet. As you and Elise converge on the partially hidden service door, she performs the most critical part of her duty. From a deep pocket concealed within the folds of her simple grey dress, she produces the instrument of your salvation. It is not a clunky, round, ceramic chamber pot, the kind you might find under a bed. This is something far more specialized, a marvel of desperate ingenuity. It is a Bourdaloue. The object is long and thin, shaped something like an elongated gravy boat or a modern-day sauce server. It's made of fine, delicate porcelain, painted with tiny, cheerful blue flowers. It has a high lip at the back and a handle at the front, designed for both ease of use and secure handling. It is, without a doubt, the most elegant and beautiful object ever created for such a deeply undignified purpose. Its very existence is a testament to the absurdity of your world. Society has created a problem, impossibly cumbersome dresses and a complete lack of facilities, and so it has engineered an equally absurd solution. The Bourdaloue was designed specifically for women, its unique shape allowing it to be slipped discreetly between the legs and under the mountain of petticoats, enabling a woman to relieve herself while standing, or at least in a slight crouch. A feat of feminine engineering born of pure necessity. The name itself is a piece of historical trivia that scholars love to debate. The most popular story, though likely apocryphal, is that it's named after a famous Jesuit priest, Louis Bourdaloue. His sermons were apparently so long, so captivating, and so impossible to leave, that the ladies of the court began bringing these special pots with them to mass, hiding them in their muffs so they wouldn't miss a word his electrifying preaching. Historians have never found concrete evidence to support this charming tale, but it persists because it just feels so perfectly, wonderfully ridiculous. Another, more practical theory is that it simply comes from the French words meaning soiled and water, a far less romantic explanation. Holding the Bourdaloue, Elise is a study in professional discretion. She keeps it low, shielded by her own body, away from the prying eyes of the court. To anyone glancing over, she might just be carrying a piece of decorative china, but you know it for what it is, A lifeline. This strange little object represents the pinnacle of a hidden, almost entirely female-centric world of logistics. The men, with their less cumbersome clothing, had a far easier time of it. They could simply find a quiet corner of the gardens or a disused fireplace. But for you, trapped within your textile fortress, this delicate porcelain boat is the only key to freedom. The procedure is fraught with peril. It requires teamwork, trust, and a great deal of practiced skill. It is a secret ballet performed by two women in a world that demands they appear effortlessly graceful at all times. You reach the service door. Unleash, ever efficient, pushes it open just a crack. It creaks. You both freeze, your hearts pounding in unison. The creak sounds as loud as a cannon shot in the relative quiet of this corner of the salon. A nearby marquis, deep in conversation about the price of lace, glances over, his expression one of mild annoyance at the interruption. He sees nothing but a Duchess and her maid admiring a plant. He turns back to his companion. You exhale a silent, shaky breath. Disaster averted. Unleash slips through the door first, holding it open for you. You gather your enormous skirts, a rustling armful of silk, and maneuver yourself sideways through the opening. The transition is jarring. You step from the glittering, sunlit world of the salon into a narrow, dim, and distinctly less fragrant corridor. The air here is cooler, smelling faintly of tallow candles and boiled cabbage. The sound of the court is instantly muffled, replaced by a low, humming silence. You have crossed the threshold. You have gone backstage. The performance is paused, and the terrifying, delicate reality is about to begin. Elise holds up the Bourdaloue, its painted blue flowers looking absurdly cheerful in the gloomy light. It's your turn to be brave. You are now in the liminal space of the palace, the unseen network of arteries that keeps the glittering beast alive. The walls here are not gilded. They are plain, scuffed plaster. The floor is not polished parquet, but rough, uneven flagstones. It is a world of pure function, stripped of all ornament, and, in this moment, it is the most beautiful place on earth. But it is not safe. Not yet. This corridor, narrow as it is still a thoroughfare for servants rushing to and fro, for footmen carrying trays, for kitchen staff on their way to the cellars. To be discovered here would be, in its own way, as humiliating as being caught in the middle of the Hall of Mirrors. It would be a different kind of failure. Not just a loss of dignity, but a breach of the invisible wall that separates your world from theirs. Not here. Madame, Elise whispers, her voice barely a breath. Too open. She leads you a few paces further down the corridor, her soft-soled shoes making no sound on the stone. Your silk slippers, by contrast, make a soft, scraping sound that seems to echo in the confined space. The pressure inside you has now reached a critical stage. The polite requests and firm demands have been replaced by a single, primal scream of a thought. NOW. Your body is no longer asking. Elise stops. She has found it. It's not much, but it will have to do. It's a small, shallow alcove, barely a dent in the wall, where a stack of unused linen has been piled. It offers minimal concealment, but it's better than nothing. It is your stage for this most private of performances. You back into the alcove, pressing yourself against the rough, dusty linen. The scratchiness of the fabric is a strange sensation through the fine silk of your gown. Elise stands in front of you, her back to the corridor, creating a human shield. She is your lookout, your guardian. Quickly, madam, she urges, her voice slow and steady, betraying no panic. Her calmness is a small, solid rock in your churning sea of anxiety. Now begins the delicate and undignified ballet. There is no way to sit. Your panniers make that impossible. You must perform this maneuver in a strange, half-crouched, half-standing position, like a heron preparing to strike. You bend your knees, your thighs screaming in protest against the strain, a feeling made worse by the rigid confinement of your corset. This awkward posture is a historical detail often overlooked. The romantic image of a lady gracefully swooning onto a chaise lounge is pure fantasy. The very structure of your clothing forces you into a state of permanent, straight posture. Bending at the waist is out of the question. Bending your knees is a struggle. You are, in essence, a beautifully decorated plank of wood. Historians have sometimes questioned the logistics of this, with some suggesting the Bourdaloue maneuver is a myth, too difficult to be practical. But others point to the sheer number of surviving Bourdaloues in museum collections as evidence that, difficult or not, it was a common practice. It was simply the least bad option in a world with no good ones. The alternative was unthinkable. Elise, with the practiced efficiency of a surgeon, begins to lift the layers of your skirt. It's an archaeological dig through fabric. First, the heavy silk brocade of the overskirt. Then, the multiple layers of linen and starched cotton petticoats. It's like creating a tent, a private dome of fabric, around your lower body. The air under the skirts is warm and smells of your own perfume, now mingling with the faint scent of your own fear. It is dark and claustrophobic inside your self-made tent. You can hear the muffled sounds of the corridor outside, the distant echo of a slammed door, the faint murmur of voices. Each sound sends a jolt of adrenaline through you. Elisa's hands, cool and professional, find their way through the darkness. She hands you the porcelain Bourdaloue, your fingers close around the handle. It feels cold and smooth and impossibly small for the monumental task it is about to perform. You position it carefully, a blind, desperate act of faith and participation. Everything depends on getting this right. A slip, a miscalculation, and the consequences would be catastrophic, a stain spreading through layers of priceless fabric. A disaster that could not be hidden. You close your eyes. You are a duchess. You are in the grandest palace in Europe, and you are hiding in a dusty nook, crouched in the dark under your own skirt, holding a gravy boat. You take a shaky, shallow breath. It is time. In the cramped darkness beneath your skirts, with the cold porcelain in your hand, you finally let go. The relief is instantaneous and so profound it is almost spiritual. It's a silent, internal sigh of your entire being. A wave of warmth that washes away the sharp-edged panic that has been your constant companion for what feels like an eternity. For a few blissful seconds, there is no king, no court, no corset. There is only this fundamental, creature-like comfort. But this moment of pure, unadulterated relief is immediately tainted by a new and growing awareness. As the immediate crisis abates, your other senses, which had been suppressed by the sheer force of your panic, come rushing back, and the most prominent of these is your sense of smell. It's not just the faint, clean scent of the laundry in the alcove or the distant whiff of cabbage from the kitchens. It is something far more pervasive, a scent you have been subconsciously filtering out all day, but which you can no longer ignore. It is the true perfume of Versailles. It's a complex and layered aroma. The base note is a damp, musty smell, the scent of stone walls that never quite dry, of ancient tapestries that have absorbed centuries of humidity. Layered on top of that is the sour, pungent tang of unwashed humanity. In a palace with thousands of residents under notoriously casual relationship with bathing, the collective odor of sweat and stale bodies is a constant presence. Then comes the sharp, acrid bite of ammonia. It's the ghost of countless past emergencies, just like yours, of waste seeping into floorboards, lingering in dark corners. A permanent, invisible stain on the palace's grandeur. It's a smell that clings to the velvet curtains and the war uniforms of the guards. And floating above it all, desperately trying to mask the grim reality, is a cloying, heavy cloud of perfume. Not the light, floral scents you might imagine, but thick, musky, animal-based fragrances, civet, ambergris, musk, powerful enough to knock a listener down. Every courtier is drenched in their own personal scent, and in the enclosed spaces of the palace, these perfumes don't blend. They fight, They create a thick, dizzying, olfactory battlefield. You are suddenly, acutely aware that this magnificent palace, this symbol of ultimate power and refinement, stinks. This is a fact that contemporary accounts often mention, much to the chagrin of later, more romantic historians. Visitors wrote of holding scented handkerchiefs to their noses as they walked the hallowed halls. The famous gardens were no better, often used as a vast, open-air latrine by courtiers and their dogs. One German princess, visiting the court, wrote in a letter home that the filth was scandalous. There is a continuing debate among scholars about just how bad it was. Some argue these accounts are exaggerated, written by rivals or visitors prone to hyperbole. They suggest that an army of servants worked constantly to maintain cleanliness and that the smells were no worse than any other large, 17th century city. Others insist the accounts are accurate. That Versailles was a beautiful, glittering facade hiding a core of squalor. Standing here, in this dusty corridor, you know which side you believe. The evidence is all around you, in every breath you take. A strange, and perhaps stilling, tidbit of information is the court's obsession with orange blossoms. The king had vast orangeries built to house thousands of orange trees in the winter. In the summer, they were moved outdoors, their sweet, powerful fragrance filling the air around the palace. It was a beautiful display, but many historians suspect it also served a very practical purpose. It was one of the few scents strong enough to compete with the palace's less desirable aromas. The relief you felt only moments ago is now fading, replaced by a grim awareness of your surroundings. The darkness under your skirt no longer feels like a safe haven, but like a small, smelly tent. You are keenly aware of the war. You spear Bourdaloue in your hand. The crisis is past, but the evidence remains. And the smell of your own perfume, which seemed so elegant and sophisticated this morning, now just feels like another cloying layer in the symphony of stench. The gilded cage is not just uncomfortable, it is profoundly, unforgettably fragrant. The delicate operation is complete. Almost inaudible cough, the prearranged signal for release. The tent of skirts is carefully dismantled, layer by layer. As she lowers the petticoats and smooths the heavy brocade of your gown back into place, you straighten your aching knees, the world swimming back into view. The dim corridor seems brighter now, your senses sharpened by the recent ordeal. Alice takes the Bourdaloue from you with a steady hand. She does not look at its contents. Her face is a mask of professional neutrality. But as you are about to step out of the alcove, a new horror presents itself. Down the corridor, emerging from the direction of the kitchens, is a figure you recognize instantly, and with a sinking heart. It is the Duchess de Beaumont, your rival, the one who gave you that knowing smirk in the Hall of Mirrors. She is not supposed to be here. This is a service corridor. What on earth is she doing in this part of the palace? She is accompanied by her own maid, a sour-faced woman who looks as unpleasant as her mistress. The Duchess is holding a small, yapping dog, a little ball of white fluff with a ribbon tied in its hair. For a terrifying, frozen moment, your eyes meet. You are standing in a dusty, ill-lit alcove, your face flushed, your dress probably showing the faintest signs of disarray. Alice is at your side, trying to subtly shield the porcelain Bourdaloue from view. The Duchess stops. A slow, venomous smile spreads across her perfectly painted face. It is a smile of pure, unadulterated triumph. She knows. She absolutely knows. She doesn't say a word. She doesn't have to. The look she gives you is a masterclass in non-verbal communication. It says, well, look what we have here. The great and powerful Duchess, hiding in the servants' quarters like a scullery maid. Humiliation, hot and sharp, washes over you. It's a far worse feeling than the physical desperation you felt just minutes ago. That was a private battle. This is a public execution. Your reputation, that fragile, carefully constructed edifice, is crumbling before your very eyes. In the vicious, high-stakes game of courtly life, You have just handed your greatest enemy a loaded pistol. This story will be all over the court by nightfall. It will be whispered behind fans, embellished and exaggerated with every telling. By tomorrow, the entire population of Versailles will know that you were forced to relieve yourself in a corridor. You will be a laughingstock. The Duchess gives a little, condescending tilt of her head. A moment of fresh air, my dear, she asks, her voice dripping with false concern. You were looking a little flushed in the gallery. Her dog, as if on cue, lets out a series of sharp, annoying yaps. This kind of social combat is the lifeblood of Versailles. Historians often describe the court as an arena of status. Physical proximity to the king was everything, but so was your reputation for grace, wit, and unflappable composure. A moment of weakness, a single embarrassing incident, could set you back for months, costing you invitations, favor, and influence. The political maneuvering was relentless, and personal humiliation was a key weapon in everyone's arsenal. There is an ongoing debate among scholars about whether this constant infighting was a bug or a feature of Louis XIV's system. Some argue it was an unfortunate side effect of cramming so many ambitious, bored people into one place. Others contend that the king actively encouraged it. By keeping his nobles busy tearing each other down, he ensured they were too distracted and divided to ever unite and challenge him. He was the master puppet master, and you were all just dancing on his strings, occasionally tangling them in embarrassing knots. You force yourself to meet her gaze. Your mind races, searching for a retort, a witty comeback, something to salvage this disaster. But nothing comes. You are caught, plain and simple. I was feeling a little faint, you managed to say, your voice sounding weak and thin to your own ears. The heat in the salon. Of course, the Duchess goes, her smile widening. The heat. One must be so careful. She gently strokes her fluffy dog. We were just taking little pom-pom for his constitutional. The gardens are so dreadfully crowded today. She has just, in the most elegant way possible, called you a dog. She gives you one last, triumphant look, turns with a rustle of silk, and continues down the corridor, her laughter echoing faintly behind her. You are left standing in the dim light of the corridor. The smell of dust and defeat thick in the air. The relief you felt is now a distant memory, replaced by a cold, sickening dread. The crisis is over, but the consequences are just beginning. For a long moment after the Duchess has disappeared, you remain frozen in the alcove, the echo of her mocking laughter seeming to ricochet off the stone walls. The silence she leaves behind is heavy and oppressive. Her niece stands beside you, her professional composure finally showing a crack. There is a flicker of genuine anger in her eyes, a silent testament to her loyalty. Madame, she begins, but her voice trails off. What is there to say? You close your eyes for a second, fighting back a wave of helpless fury. To have navigated the crisis so perfectly, to have achieved the impossible, only to be undone by sheer, rotten luck. To be brought low not by your own failure, but by the malice of another. It is the story of court life in miniature. But you cannot stay here, hiding in the shadows. To linger would be to admit defeat. The only way to combat the Duchess's narrative is to create a new one. You must return to the fray. Your head held high, as if nothing has happened. You must project an aura of such unassailable confidence that anyone who hears the rumor would doubt its source. It is your only weapon. Come, unleash. You say, your voice steadier than you feel. We are leaving. You step out of the corridor, back through the small service door, and enter the glittering world of the salon. The transition is just as jarring as it was before, but this time it feels different. The light seems harsher, the chatter of the courtiers more pointed. You feel as though 1,000 eyes are on you, that they all know your secret. You fan yourself, not just for air, but as a shield, a fragile barrier between your crumbling composure and the prying world. This is the part of the story that takes place entirely beneath the surface, under the canopy of silk and protocol. Outwardly, nothing has changed. You are still the Duchess, resplendent in your golden gown. But inwardly, you are a general regrouping after a devastating ambush. This is where the real performance begins. It's a concept modern sociologists call impression management, the constant effort to control how others perceive you. But here in Versailles, it is not a theory, it is a survival skill. You force yourself to walk towards a group of acquaintances, a smile pinned to your face. You join their conversation, laughing at a joke you didn't quite hear, adding a meaningless comment about the weather. You are an automaton of etiquette. Every gesture is deliberate. Every word chosen to project serene elegance. Bourdaloue. Your mind is racing. You are replaying the encounter with the Duchess, analyzing her words, her expression. You are crafting your defense. If someone dares to mention the rumor to you, you will feign ignorance. You will laugh it off as a ridiculous fantasy. A piece of spiteful gossip from a woman known for her imagination. You will turn the weapon back on her. There's a curious parallel here to the political world of the court. Historians often note how much of the work of being a courtier was simply being present, being seen, and managing one's reputation. A noble's power was not just in their land or titles, but in their credit, their social standing, their network of allies, their influence with the king. An incident like this, if left unchecked, could damage your credit, making you seem clumsy, unlucky, or worse, a victim. In the predator-prey ecosystem of Versailles, to be seen as a victim was to invite more attacks. The concept of a private life, as you understand it, is a luxury that doesn't exist here. Your body, your health, your moods, they are all public property, subjects for discussion and speculation. You remember hearing about a princess who suffered from terrible tooth issues. Her pain became a topic of court gossip for weeks, with factions forming between those who sympathized and those who saw it as a sign of physical weakness. You feel a wave of exhaustion so profound it's almost dizzying. The physical strain of the corset, the emotional toll of the constant vigilance, the sheer effort of maintaining this flawless facade. It's a crushing weight. You look around the room, at the powdered faces and fixed smiles, and for the first time, you see not just your rivals and allies, but fellow performers, each one playing their part in this exhausting, endless play. You catch your reflection in a sliver of mirror between two portraits. You look magnificent. Your gown shimmers. Your jewels sparkle. Your expression is one of calm, aristocratic poise. The illusion is perfect. No one, looking at you now, could possibly guess at the frantic, humiliating drama that just unfolded in a dusty corridor. You are a masterpiece of deception, a walking, talking lie, and for now, that is the only thing keeping you afloat. You are in the middle of feigning intense interest in a tedious story about someone's cousin's disappointing dowry when a new sound cuts through the genteel chatter of the salon. It's a sharp, rhythmic sound. Clack, clack, clack. The sound of heavy-heeled boots on the polished parquet floor, approaching with purpose. A ripple of awareness spreads through the room. Conversations falter. Fans stop fluttering. It's the sound of authority. Two members of the Swiss Guard, the king's personal bodyguards, enter the salon. They are magnificent figures, tall and imposing in their striking blue, red, and white uniforms. They carry fearsome-looking halberdiers, the combination of a spear and a battle axe, which they hold with practiced ease. They are not courtiers, they are soldiers, and their presence here, inside the state apartments, means something is happening. They are not looking at anyone. Their gazes are fixed straight ahead, their expressions stern and unreadable. They are clearing a path. Behind them, a court official, a man with a perpetually worried expression and a stack of papers, scurries to keep up. And then, just as they are passing the alcove where you had your near disaster a little while ago, one of the guards stops. He holds up a hand, halting his companion. The official nearly bumps into his back. The guard turns his head, his eyes scanning the corridor from which you just emerged. Your blood runs cold. For a heart-stopping moment, you are certain they are looking for you, that the Duchess de Beaumont, in an act of breathtaking malice, has somehow reported you for what? For using a service corridor, for existing. The logic doesn't matter. The fear is primal. You feel the color drain from your face, a genuine paleness that no amount of powder could replicate. The guard takes a step towards the small, unassuming service door. He places a gauntleted hand upon it. This is it. He is going to open the door. He is going to find something, some evidence, a stray scent, a ghost of your presence. Your entire, carefully reconstructed composure shatters. You are no longer a duchess. You are a terrified child, about to be caught. But he doesn't open the door. He simply stands there for a moment, listening. His head is cocked, as if attuned to a sound no one else can hear. The silence in the salon is now absolute. Everyone is watching this bizarre, silent drama unfold. Then, from the corridor behind the door, comes a faint scuffling sound, followed by a muffled curse. The guard does not react, but a flicker of something, annoyance, recognition, crosses his face. He turns away from the door and resumes his march without a word. His companion falls into step beside him. The official, looking flustered, scurries after them. The procession continues through the salon and out the other side, leaving a wake of confused silence. The spell is broken. The courtiers, like a flock of startled birds, all begin chattering at once. What was that? Who was in the corridor? Was it an intruder? A lover's tryst? The speculation begins instantly, a fresh log on the fire of court gossip. You, however, are just starting to breathe again. It was a close call, a terrifying coincidence that had absolutely nothing to do with you. Your secret, for now, remains safe. The guards were not looking for you. They were simply on patrol, and their route, it seems, takes them past the very scene of your crime. The presence of the Swiss Guard is a constant reminder that Versailles is not just a palace. It is a fortress, the center of government and state security. While the courtiers engage in their games of fashion and favor, these men are responsible for the king's safety. They are a serious, and sometimes intimidating, presence in a world of frivolity. There's a curious historical detail about the palace's security. While the king was protected by elite guards, the rest of the palace was notoriously porous. Thieves and grifters were common, often dressing as nobles to blend in and pick pockets or steal small, valuable items. One famous rogue even managed to steal a courtier's diamond-buckled shoes right off his feet while he was napping in a chair. The line between the glittering court and the gritty underworld was surprisingly thin. This is a point of debate for scholars. Was the security lax by design, to maintain an open court accessible to the king's subjects? Or was it simply an impossible task to secure such a massive, chaotic building? Whatever the reason, it created a strange atmosphere of high glamour and low cunning, where you might be bowing to the king one moment and having your purse snatched the next. The wave of adrenaline leaves you feeling shaky and weak. You murmur an excuse to the group you were with and find an empty chair in a quiet corner. Sinking into it gratefully, the sheer emotional whiplash of the last hour is overwhelming. The desperation, the relief, the humiliation, the terror, the renewed relief. It's more exhausting than a week of manual labor. You find yourself, not for show, but because you genuinely need the air. The gilded cage, you realize, is not just uncomfortable and smelly, it's also a place of constant, nerve-shredding anxiety. You watch as Elise, your ever-faithful accomplice, melts back into the background. Your immediate, personal crisis is over, but hers has just begun. She now has the delicate and deeply unpleasant task of dealing with the aftermath. She is carrying the Bourdaloue. It is, at this moment, the most incriminating object in the entire palace. She cannot simply carry it openly back to your apartments. To be seen with it would be to announce to the world what has just transpired. She must be a ghost, a shadow, navigating the crowded, glittering halls with her delicate, porcelain burden. You watch her from across the room. She moves with a practiced ease that you envy. She keeps to the edges of the salon, her simple dress allowing her to blend in with the tapestries and the furniture. She holds the Bourdaloue low, partially concealed in the folds of a linen cloth she found in the service corridor. To a casual observer, she is just a maid on an errand, perhaps carrying a vase or a piece of tableware. Only you and she know the true nature of her cargo. This is the hidden labor of Versailles. For every noble floating serenely through the halls, there are a dozen servants like Elise, scurrying through back corridors, performing the thousands of unglamorous tasks that keep the whole magnificent illusion afloat. They are the invisible engineers of elegance. Elise's journey is a perilous one. She must traverse the same grand apartments you did, but her perspective is entirely different. She is not looking at the art or the architecture. She is looking for clear paths, for distracted guards, for moments when no one is looking. Her journey is a masterclass in stealth and situational awareness. You imagine her route. She will likely not take the direct path. She will use the network of service corridors wherever possible. Those same dim, functional passageways you just experienced. She will emerge into the grander rooms only when necessary, hugging the walls, her eyes constantly scanning. And what is her final destination? Where does one dispose of such evidence? This is another of Versailles' grim secrets. There is no central sewage system, no graceful, water-fed network to whisk away the court's waste. The solution is far more direct, and far more grim. Elise will carry the Bourdaloue back to your private apartments. There, she will empty its contents into a larger chamber pot kept in your dressing room. And later, probably under the cover of darkness, a junior servant, a footman whose job this is, will have the unenviable task of carrying that heavy, sloshing pot down countless flights of stairs, out of the palace, and to one of the designated cesspits at the edge of the grounds. These cesspits are a detail often omitted from the glowing descriptions of the palace. They were large, open pits, cleaned out periodically by laborers in a job that was considered one of the most foul and dangerous available. The smell, on a hot summer day, could be detected from a great distance. There is a rather grim and ongoing debate among environmental historians about the long-term impact of Versailles on the local ecosystem. The sheer concentration of so much human and animal waste, with no modern sanitation, likely had a profound effect on the local water table and soil quality. The beautiful, geometric gardens, in a way, were fertilized by the very courtiers who strolled through them. You shudder at the thought. The entire system is a cascade of unpleasantness, passed down from the highest ranks to the lowest. You, the Duchess, experience the anxiety. Elise, the maid, handles the immediate evidence, and some poor, unnamed footman deals with the final, grim reality. The whole edifice of courtly life is built upon a foundation of discreetly managed filth. You see Elise reach the far end of the salon. She slips through a doorway, disappearing from your sight. You feel a pang of guilt. Your comfort has been purchased at the cost of her own difficult, and frankly, disgusting, labor. It is a debt you can never truly repay, except with kindness and the occasional silver brooch. This is the structure of your world, as rigid and unyielding as your corset. It is a pyramid of convenience. Your entire life is dedicated to the performance of leisure, to existing as a beautiful object. And that performance is only made possible by an army of invisible people, carrying your burdens, both literal and metaphorical, for you. You take a sip of the lukewarm water a footman has brought you on a silver tray. Even this simple act is part of the chain. Someone had to draw the water, carry it to you, serve it in a polished glass. You are the endpoint of a long line of labor you never have to see. As you watch the glittering, oblivious courtiers around you, you realize with a sudden clarity that the gilded cage is not just a prison for you. It's a prison for everyone. from the king at the top to the boy cleaning the cesspitess at the bottom. Each of you is trapped in your designated role, performing your part in the grand, absurd, and beautiful lie of Versailles, with the immediate crisis and its subsequent anxieties now fading to a dull throb. Your mind drifts to another, related subject, water, specifically, the almost complete lack of it on your person. You subtly lift your wrist to your nose, pretending to adjust a lace cuff. You catch a whiff of your perfume, the powerful musk scent you applied this morning, but underneath it, you can detect the faint, salty tang of your own skin, the scent of a body that has been tightly bound in layers of fabric for hours in a warm, crowded room. You feel unclean. This is another of the great paradoxes of Versailles. You are surrounded by water. The gardens are a marvel of hydraulic engineering, with vast canals, hundreds of fountains, and spectacular water shows that draw gasps of awe from visitors. The king spent a fortune diverting rivers and building massive pumping machines to bring water to his playground. Yet, for all this aquatic abundance, very little of it was used for personal hygiene. The concept of bathing, as you might think of it, is a rare and complicated affair. There are bathrooms in the palace, a few of them, equipped with magnificent marble tubs, but they are seen as places of exotic luxury, of medical treatment, or even of decadent leisure, not as part of a daily routine. To take a full bath is a major production, requiring servants to hold bucket after bucket of heated water. It's something one might do a few times a year, perhaps. Instead, you practice the art of the dry clean. Your morning ritual did not involve soap and water. It involved being rubbed down with a linen cloth, sometimes dry, sometimes dampened with perfumed vinegar or alcohol. This was thought to be cleansing insufficient. Your face was not washed, but rather wiped and then covered with a thick layer of lead-based white powder. Your teeth, if you were particularly diligent, might be scrubbed with a special powder made from things like crushed coral or burnt eggshells, using a rough cloth. Water, in the popular medical understanding of the time, was often viewed with suspicion. It was believed that immersing the body in water, particularly hot water, could open the pores and allow miasmas, or disease-carrying vapors, to enter the body. A good, thick layer of grime, sealed in with powder and perfume, was considered by some to be a protective barrier against illness. Historians still debate the true extent of this aquaphobia. Some argue it's an overblown myth and that the wealthy did bathe more often than the records suggest. Others maintain that the fear of water was very real and that 17th century Europe, even at its most elite levels, was a profoundly undue gift in it placed by modern standards. The sheer amount of money spent on perfumes and scented powders seems to support the latter theory. They weren't just accessories, they were necessities, the primary weapons in the war against body odor. You think of your own apartments. You have a beautiful porcelain basin and a matching pitcher. Every morning, Elise brings you a small amount of fresh water in it. You use this to rinse your hands and perhaps dab your eyes. This small, simple act feels like the height of luxury. The idea of immersing your entire body in that water is almost unthinkable. This is why perfume is so critical. It is your personal atmosphere, your olfactory shield. It announces your presence and, more importantly, it masks any inconvenient bodily realities. The choice of perfume is a significant one. Musky, animal-based scents are favored because they are strong and long-lasting, capable of overpowering other odors for hours. You are, in essence, marinating in a carefully chosen scent. You look at the Duchess de Beaumont, now holding court across the room. She looks immaculate, a vision in pale blue silk, but you know that she, too, is subject to the same physical laws and hygiene customs. Beneath her expensive perfume, behind her flawless powder, she is just as unwashed as you are. It's a strangely comforting thought, a small piece of common ground in your field of mutual animosity. You are both living in the same fragrant illusion. The great irony, of course, is the fountain sparkling just outside the window. They shoot jets of water 100 feet into the air, a breathtaking display of man's mastery over nature. It is water as spectacle. Water as art. Water as a symbol of the king's power. It is water for every purpose except the most obvious one. It is meant to be looked at, not touched. Just like the courtiers themselves. You are all part of the display. Polished on the outside, but fundamentally, profoundly, unwashed. Elise returns. She appears at your elbow as if summoned from the very air. Her face once again a perfect mask of calm efficiency. She gives you a tiny, imperceptible nod. The mission is complete. The evidence has been disposed of. The crisis, in all its phases, is finally truly over. A wave of genuine, unburdened relief washes over you. The tension you've been holding in your shoulders for the last hour begins to dissipate. You can feel the frantic rhythm of your heart, which has been pounding a staccato beat against your corset, finally begin to slow to a more manageable tempo. You are safe. The rumor mill may churn, thanks to the Duchess de Beaumont, but there is no proof. It is your word against hers. And in the world of Versailles, a world built on appearances, your composed facade is everything. You rise from your chair, the movement slow and deliberate. It is time to rejoin the world, to step back into the full glare of the courtly stage. You are no longer the frightened animal seeking a dark corner. You are the Duchess once more, a creature of light and air and unshakable grace. You begin to circulate again, moving through the glittering salons with a newfound confidence. Your smile no longer feels pinned on. It feels genuine. Your laughter, when you join a conversation, sounds light and effortless. The terror of the last hour has been locked away in a small, dark box in the back of your mind. You are the living embodiment of composure. This ability to compartmentalize, to project an image utterly at odds with your internal state, is perhaps the most essential survival skill at court. It's a form of emotional armor, as vital as your corset is for physical shape. To show vulnerability is to invite attack. To show distress is to lose status. And so, you have all become masters of the pleasant facade. You encounter the Marquis, who was so engrossed in his conversation about lace when you slipped into the service corridor. He bows deeply. "Duchess," he says, his eyes twinkling. "You are looking particularly radiant this afternoon. The country air must agree with you. You have not been to the country in 6 months. You are too kind, monsieur," you reply. Your voice is smooth as cream. It is merely the light in this magnificent hall. The king has such a talent for creating beauty. It's a perfect courtly exchange, meaningless, flattering, and it subtly deflects the compliment towards the king, which is always a wise move. The Marquis beams, pleased with your response. He has no idea of the chaotic drama that unfolded just a few feet away from his tedious conversation. To him, you are simply a beautiful, serene part of the scenery. The illusion holds. Historians have often wondered about the psychological toll of this kind of relentless performance. Did these courtiers ever relax? Did they have private selves? Or did the public mask eventually become the true face? It's a point of speculation, as personal diaries from the era that speak of such anxieties are rare. To write down your fears would be to create evidence, a dangerous act in a world of spies and rivals. Some scholars theorize that the rigid structure and endless ritual of court life were actually a comfort, a way of navigating a complex social world with a clear set of rules. Others argue it created a state of constant, low-grade paranoia, where every smile was suspect and every compliment could be a trap. As you thank the Marquis and move on, you suspect the truth lies somewhere in the exhausting middle. You even manage to glide past the Duchess de Beaumont. You meet her gaze for a fleeting second, and you give her a small, serene smile, a smile that says, "Your pathetic attempt to rattle me has failed." It is a silent declaration of war, a promise that you will not be an easy target. She returns the smile with one of equal artifice, a silent acknowledgement that the game is afoot. The battle has moved from the dim corridor to the glittering salon, and it will now be fought with whispers, glances, unsocial maneuvering, the preferred weapons of your class. You are, in this moment, a triumph of mind over body. You have conquered biological necessity, survived public humiliation, and stared down your enemy. You have proven that you belong here. You have mastered the art of being a Duchess at Versailles. The cost of this mastery, the physical discomfort, the emotional strain, the constant, gnawing anxiety, is hidden so deep beneath the surface that even you can almost forget it's there. Almost, now that the fire of your own personal crisis has been extinguished. You find yourself looking at the palace with new eyes. Before, its grandeur was an oppressive backdrop to your panic. Now, with your senses sharpened and your composure restored, you begin to see it not just as a stage, but as a living and deeply flawed entity. You start to notice the cracks in the golden veneer. You run a gloved finger along a magnificent, gilded windowsill. It comes away with a faint but definite layer of dust. You glance up at a massive, glorious tapestry depicting one of the king's military victories. It's breathtaking from a distance, a whirlwind of color and action. But, as you look closer, you can see a large, dark stain near the bottom corner, a faint water ring of ambiguous origin that no amount of cleaning has been able to fully remove. It's like a spell has been broken. Before, you saw only the overwhelming effect of the whole. Now, you see the messy, grimy details that make it up. You notice the corner of a carpet that is frayed and worn from the passage of thousands of heeled shoes. You see a faint smear on one of the 357 mirrors in the great hall, a greasy smudge left by a curious hand and missed by the servants. You spot a tiny chip in the marble foot of a chair upon a console table. The palace, which moments ago seemed like a perfect, divine creation, now reveals itself for what it is, a physical place, subject to the laws of entropy. Dirt and decay, just like everything else. It is an endless, losing battle for the army of servants to keep this level of opulence pristine against the onslaught of thousands of careless, living, breathing people. This is a detail that many historical accounts, focused on the grandeur in the politics, often miss. They speak of the gilding and the marble, but not the grime that inevitably collects upon them. It's a subject that social historians, however, find fascinating. They call it the material culture of maintenance. How was a place like this actually kept running? How do you dust a room with a 40-foot ceiling? How do you polish thousands of square feet of parquet for every day? The answer is, with immense difficulty and often, imperfectly. Inventories from the palace list an astonishing number of brooms, mops, buckets, and polishing cloths. There were specialized teams for everything. Floor polishers, window washers, furniture dusters. But the sheer scale of the place meant that some things were inevitably missed. There's a famous, and possibly exaggerated, story of a courtier who died in his apartment and was not discovered for several days. His absence simply unnoticed in the chaos of the court. While likely a piece of anti-Versailles propaganda, the story speaks to a certain truth. The palace was so vast and so crowded that things, and people, could easily get lost in the cracks. You find yourself looking at the other courtiers through this new, more critical lens. You see the faint sheen of sweat on the duke's brow, cleverly disguised by his thick layer of powder. You notice a tiny spot of wine on a baroness's otherwise immaculate lace collar. You see the way a count's powdered wig is slightly askew, revealing a sliver of his real, less glamorous hairline. Everyone is slightly frayed, slightly stained, slightly imperfect. Everyone is struggling to maintain the illusion of their flawlessness. The Duchess de Beaumont, you notice with a tiny spark of satisfaction, has a small tear in the hem of her gown, probably from catching it on a splintered floorboard. It is a tiny, insignificant detail that no one else would see, but you see it, and it is a small comfort. This realization doesn't diminish the grandeur of Versailles. In a strange way, it makes it even more impressive. It is not a magical, perfect place. It is a place of immense, relentless, human effort. The beauty is not effortless. It is hard-won, a constant struggle against the forces of chaos and filth. The palace is a testament not just to the king's ambition, but to the tireless, invisible labor of the thousands who fight to keep the dream alive every single day. You feel a strange new sense of ownership, of understanding. You are not just a puppet in this play. You are part of the mechanism, your own struggle, your own desperate search for a moment of privacy, your own careful reconstruction of your composure. It is all part of the same story. The story of trying to impose perfect, elegant order on a messy, imperfect world, and seeing the cracks, seeing the dust, doesn't make the cage any less of a cage. It just makes the gilded bars look a little more tarnished, a little more real. Later in the afternoon, seeking a respite from the stuffy, overcrowded salons, you find yourself strolling in the famous gardens. Here, at least, you can breathe. The air, while still thick with the scent of orange blossoms and damp earth, feels cleaner, fresher. The sky above is a vast, open canvas, but the freedom of the gardens is an illusion, a different kind of gilded cage. Your stroll is not a solitary one. The gardens are just as much a social stage as the Hall of Mirrors. Courtiers parade up and down the main avenues, stopping to exchange gossip, to see and be seen. The performance continues, just with a backdrop of manicured greenery instead of gilded walls. And the gardens have their own dirty secret, one that is far less concealed than the palaces. As you walk, you must be careful where you step. While the main paths are relatively clear, the more secluded areas, the little groves, the spaces behind the marble statues, the dark corners of the yew tree mazes, serve a very practical and public purpose. They are the unofficial, open-air lavatory of the court. With thousands of people and a near total lack of facilities, the gardens bear the brunt of the daily biological necessities of the court. The smell, in certain downwind areas, is unmistakable. You see a group of young noblemen laughing loudly as they disappear into a grove of trees. And you know they are not admiring the foliage. You see a lady in waiting quickly duck behind a large, ornamental urn, her friend standing guard. It is a mass conspiracy of public indecency, accepted by all because there is simply no alternative. This is a point that shocks many modern visitors to Versailles, but contemporary accounts are quite clear on the matter. The gardens, for all their beauty, were often foul. The maintenance was, again, a constant battle. An army of gardeners worked tirelessly, not just to prune the hedges, but to clean up after the courtiers. There is a historical debate about the extent to which this was acceptable. Was it seen as normal and unremarkable, a simple fact of life? Or was it a source of embarrassment, a necessary evil that everyone tried to ignore? The truth is likely a mixture. It was normal, in that it happened every day, but it was also something done with a degree of discretion. You didn't do it on the main path in front of a duke. You found a quiet corner. It was an etiquette of filth, a set of unwritten rules for a deeply unsanitary practice. You find a marble bench overlooking the Grand Canal, the vast, mile-long stretch of water that forms the centerpiece of the gardens. Gondolas, a gift from the Doge of Venice, glide silently across its surface. It is a scene of perfect, tranquil beauty. But now, you cannot unknow what you know. You look at the dark, still water of the canal and wonder what secrets it holds, what has seeped into it from the surrounding soil. You also notice the dogs. They are everywhere, small, fluffy lapdogs like the Duchess de Beaumont's, then larger, sleeker hunting hounds accompanying their masters. They run freely, adding their own contributions to the general squalor of the gardens. There was even a famous dog cemetery established on an island in the canal for the king's favorite pets, a level of consideration for deceased animals that was not always extended to the living servants. This freedom you sought, out here in the open air, is a sham. You are still trapped, still performing. You still have to watch your step. both literally and figuratively. You are still surrounded by the same people, the same intrigues, the same pressures. The only difference is that the cage has no ceiling. A cool breeze rustles the leaves of the perfectly trimmed linden trees. For a moment, it carries away the heavy perfumes and the underlying stench, and you can smell only the clean scent of green, growing things. It is a fleeting, beautiful moment, but it is just a moment. You are still at Versailles, and there is no real escape. You are simply in a different, slightly larger, and more openly soiled room of the same grand prison. You watch as the king himself takes a stroll on the far bank of the canal, surrounded by a small, privileged coterie of his highest-ranking nobles. Even from this distance, his presence is magnetic. The group moves at his pace, their attention focused solely on him. It is the solar system in miniature, the planets revolving around the sun. This prompts a thought, a question that is both impertinent and unavoidable. Was about him. How does the Sun King, the center of this universe, deal with the same base, biological realities that have caused you such turmoil today? The answer, as with all things concerning the king, is a matter of public ritual and private luxury. Louis XIV does not seek out a dusty corridor or a secluded garden grove. The process comes to him. His hygiene, like everything else in his life, is a performance. The laver, his formal awakening and dressing ceremony, is a highly sought-after event. Nobles jostle for the privilege of watching him get out of bed, wipe his face with a spirit-soaked cloth, and put on his royal breeches. To be granted the honor of handing the king his shirt is a sign of immense favor. And when nature calls for the king, it is an affair of state. He possesses a number of chaises perses, or commode chairs, but these are not simple, functional items. They are thrones of a different sort. His favorite is a magnificent piece of furniture, upholstered in red velvet, with gilded arms and intricate carvings. It is a work of art, a symbol of power even in the most private of moments. When the king needs to use it, the chair is brought to him in his private study or bedchamber. He does not go to the toilet. The toilet comes to him, and he is often not alone. It was not uncommon for him to continue receiving visitors, dictating letters, or holding meetings with his ministers while seated upon his velvet throne. To be invited to attend the king during this business was another sign of incredible intimacy and trust. It was a strange, almost surreal honor. This is a fact of court life that modern minds find almost impossible to grasp. The complete lack of privacy, even in what we would consider the most personal of acts, is baffling. But in the world of Versailles, privacy was equated with secrecy, and secrecy with conspiracy. To be constantly visible was to be trustworthy. The king's body was not his own. It was the property of the state. Its functions were part of the daily routine of government. There is a historical debate about how public these moments truly were. Some accounts suggest they were witnessed only by a handful of the most senior courtiers and officials. Others paint a picture of a more crowded room, with dozens of people vying for a spot. The truth probably varies depending on the occasion and the king's mood. But the core fact remains. For the king, even this was a performance of power. He was so secure in his majesty that he could afford to be seen in a state of ultimate vulnerability, turning even that into a display of authority. You think of your own frantic, humiliating scramble, and you cannot help but feel a flicker of resentment. The contrast is staggering. Your day has been defined by the desperate, hidden struggle to find a moment of solitude. His is defined by the effortless, public summoning of a velvet-trimmed commode. The Gilded Cage has very different rules for its most important resident. One of the most curious artifacts to survive from this era is the king's personal enema kit. It was a common medical practice at the time, believed to cleanse the body and maintain health. Louis XIV was a great believer in them and received them frequently. The royal physicians would administer the procedure, another intimate act performed as part of the official court routine. His health was a matter of national importance, and his bowels were a subject of serious medical and political discussion. As the king's procession moves on, You are left with this strange, almost absurd image in your mind. The most powerful man in Europe, a figure considered semi-divine by his subjects, sitting on his velvet commode, calmly discussing matters of war and diplomacy. It is the ultimate expression of the Versailles paradox, the seamless blending of the highest ceremony and the most basic, earthy reality. It's a world where bowel movement can be an act of statecraft. And in this strange, glittering, and deeply human place, it almost makes sense. As the afternoon sun begins its slow descent, casting long, soft shadows across the manicured lawns, a subtle change comes over the court. The frantic energy of the day begins to wane, replaced by a kind of weary languor. The endless performance is taking its toll on everyone. You are making your way back towards the palace when you see a friend. The Baronne de Saint-Vignacy, seated alone on a bench, looking pale and unwell. Her fan lies limp in her lap, and her usually bright eyes are dull and heavy-lidded. You approach her with a sense of concern that momentarily eclipses your own social anxieties. "Charlotte, are you all right?" you ask, your voice soft. "You look tired." She attempts a smile, but it's a weak, fragile thing. "It is nothing, my dear," she says, her voice a little hoarse. "Just a touch of the vapors. The heat, you know." But you suspect it's more than that. Her skin has a faint, clammy sheen, and there's a slight tremor in her hand as she reaches for her fan. This is not the elegant, theatrical fainting spell of a delicate lady. This is the beginning of a real sickness. A shiver, entirely unrelated to the evening chill, runs down your spine. Sickness is the silent, ever-present predator that stalks the halls of Versailles, for all its beauty and opulence. The palace can be a remarkably unhealthy place. You have thousands of people crammed together in close quarters, with poor sanitation and a questionable understanding of hygiene. It is a perfect breeding ground for disease. Outbreaks of influenza, smallpox, dysentery, and typhoid fever are terrifyingly common, sweeping through the court with devastating speed. A simple cold can turn into a fatal pneumonia in a matter of days. The medical care available is, to be blunt, a lottery. The king's personal physicians are the best that money can buy, but their methods are still rooted in ancient theories of the four humors. The primary treatments for almost any ailment are bleeding, purging, and enemas, all designed to rebalance the body's humors, but in reality, they often just weaken an already sick patient. You look at your friend, Sordid, and a sense of helplessness washes over you. If she is truly falling ill, there is very little anyone can do for her beyond making her comfortable and praying. This is a side of Versailles that is often lost in the tales of romance and intrigue, the sheer fragility of life. Death is a constant, familiar presence. You've seen young, vibrant courtiers struck down by a sudden fever in the prime of their lives. You've seen entire families devastated by a smallpox epidemic. The mortality rate, especially for children, is heartbreakingly high. There is a historical debate about whether living at Versailles was actually more dangerous than living elsewhere in France. Some historians argue that the concentration of people and the poor sanitation made it a death trap. Others contend that the residents of the court, being wealthy, had better access to food and shelter than the general population, which may have offset the risks. They also point out that the king himself lived to the ripe old age of 76, an unusually long life for the era, suggesting the environment couldn't have been entirely toxic. But, as you look at Charlotte's pale face, the academic debate feels meaningless. The fear is real and immediate. You remember the poison affair from a few years ago, a massive scandal that rocked the court to its foundations. It was discovered that a network of fortune tellers and alchemists were selling not just love potions, but also deadly poisons to high-ranking nobles, who were using them to dispatch rivals and inconvenient spouses. The investigation implicated hundreds of people, including some of the most famous names at court. It created an atmosphere of deep paranoia. For a time, no one trusted their food or drink. The fear was not just of invisible germs, but of visible, human malice. Perhaps you should return to your rooms. You suggest gently to Charlotte. You need to rest. She nods weakly. Yes, I think I must. You help her to her feet. She leans on you, and you are struck by how light she feels, how fragile. Her brocade gown, which looked so substantial and impressive just an hour ago, now seems like a hollow, empty shell. You walk with her slowly, your own exhaustion forgotten, replaced by a cold dread. The Gilded Cage is not just a place of social anxiety and physical discomfort. It is also a place of genuine, mortal danger and sickness. Unlike a courtier rival, is an enemy you cannot defeat with a witty retort or a composed smile. It is an enemy that doesn't care about your title, your gown, or your standing with the king. After ensuring Charlotte is safely back in her apartments and in the care of her own anxious maids, you decide it is time for your own retreat. The day is officially over. The sun has dipped below the horizon, and the gardens are sinking into a deep, velvety darkness, punctuated only by the distant flicker of lanterns. The palace is beginning to transform. The grand, sunlit stage of the afternoon is being dismantled, replaced by the more intimate, shadowy theatre of the evening. Torches and thousands of candles are being lit in the main halls, casting a raw, flickering glow that makes the gold leaf on the walls seem to swim in dance. The atmosphere is less formal, more charged with the possibility of clandestine meetings unromantic liaisons. But you have no energy for the evening's intrigues. The day's accumulated weight, the physical strain of your clothing, the emotional roller coasters, the chilling encounter with your sick friend, has settled deep in your bones. All you want is the sanctuary of your own rooms. The journey back feels even longer than the journey out. Your feet, squeezed into tight, heeled slippers, ache with every step. The dull pain in your lower back, a constant companion from the corset, has sharpened into a persistent, grinding ache. Your magnificent gown, which felt so grand this morning, now feels like a lead cloak. You navigate the corridors, which are now less crowded but filled with new obstacles. Footmen rushing with trays of food for private dinners, servants carrying candelabras, groups of nobles heading towards the gambling tables or the opera. The symphony of the court has changed its tune, from the bright allegro of the afternoon to the moody adagio of the evening. As you walk, you feel a profound sense of detachment. You are moving through this world, but you are no longer truly a part of it. Your mind is already in your quiet bedchamber. You are a ghost, haunting the palace until you can finally disappear. This feeling of exhaustion was likely a universal experience for the courtiers. The sheer stamina required for a full day at Versailles is something historians often comment on. The day started early and ended late, filled with an endless succession of rituals, ceremonies, and social obligations. There was very little time for rest or true leisure. It was a life of structured, competitive exhaustion. Some scholars even speculate that this chronic fatigue contributed to the court's reputation for emotional volatility and irrational behavior. A population that is perpetually sleep-deprived, physically uncomfortable, and under immense social pressure is not likely to be a model of calm reason. The famous ennui of the French aristocracy might not have been a philosophical malaise so much as a state of profound, collective burnout. You pass the entrance to the chapel, where evening vespers are being sung. The sound of the choir, pure and ethereal, spills out into the corridor. For a moment, it's a soothing balm on your frayed nerves, but it's also a reminder of another duty, another performance you are glad to be missing tonight. You finally reach the wing where your apartments are located. The corridors here are quieter, the light dimmer. The air still and carries the scent of beeswax from the polished floors. The sound of your own footsteps seems loud in the relative silence. You arrive at your door. You don't have a key. Keys are for servants. You simply knock. A soft, tired tap. After a moment, the door swings open, and there is Elise, her face calm and welcoming. Behind her, the soft, warm light of your own room spills out like a promise. You step across the threshold, and as the door closes behind you, shutting out the noise and the endless demands of the court, you feel a sense of relief so total it is almost overwhelming. You have made it. You have survived another day. You lean against the closed door for a moment, your eyes shut. You are no longer the Duchess. You are not a rival, not a friend, not a performer. You are just a woman, tired and aching, who has finally come home. The cage door has swung shut, but for the first time all day, it feels like you are on the right side of it. You are in your own small, private, and blessedly quiet corner of the vast, exhausting machine of Versailles. The moment you have been dreaming of since you first felt the pull of the corset laces this morning has finally arrived. It is time for the great undressing. It is a ritual in reverse, a careful deconstruction of the public self you've worn all day. Unleash, ever efficient, begins the process. There are no frantic movements, just a calm, practiced sequence of actions. First, the jewelry, the heavy, glittering necklace is unclasped from your neck, its coolness a relief against your warm skin. The matching earrings are removed, and you rub your earlobes, feeling the blood rush back into them. The rings are slipped from your fingers. Each item is carefully placed in a velvet-lined box. They are beautiful, but they are also shackles, and you are glad to be free of them. Next, the magnificent gown itself. It is too heavy and complex for you to simply shrug off. You stand still, like a statue, while Elise moves around you, unfastening a series of hidden hooks and ties, with a final, satisfying rustle. The great weight of the silk brocade is lifted up and over your head. You see it for a moment, a shimmering, empty shell, before Elise whisks it away to be aired and checked for any stains or damage. You are now standing in the architectural underpinnings of your outfit. The panniers and the petticoats. The panniers are untied, and the wicker cages that have given you your formidable width are removed. You can suddenly move your arms freely. Stand closer to the furniture. It feels like stepping out of a small room. The layers of petticoats follow, one by one, until they lie in a frothy white pile on the floor. And now, the main event, the liberation. You turn your back to Elise and hold on to the bedpost, just as you did this morning. But this time, the feeling is not one of dread, but of delicious anticipation. Elise finds the end of the corset's lace. She doesn't untie the knot. That would take too long. Instead, she takes a small, sharp knife from her sewing kit. There is a soft snip. The lace is cut. The release is not gradual. It is sudden. A glorious, instantaneous wave of freedom. You gasp as your ribs expand, as your lungs fill with a deep, full, satisfying breath for the first time in over 12 hours. It is a breath so profound it makes you slightly lightheaded. You can feel your own organs gently, gratefully, settling back into their natural positions. The dull ache in your back eases. The vice has been opened. This moment of release is a historical detail that is hard to overstate. For the women of your time, this was likely the most physically satisfying moment of any day. Some historians argue that the very act of cutting the laces became a metaphor in literature and private letters, a symbol of liberation, freedom, and sometimes romantic intimacy, as it was a prelude to disrobing completely. The sound of that snip was the sound of the performance ending and real life beginning. You press a hand to your waist. Your skin is tender, marked with red lines from the boning of the corset. It will ache for a little while. A phantom pain from its long confinement. You rotate your shoulders, stretch your back. Small movements that feel incredibly luxurious. Whether corset caused permanent damage is a subject of endless fascination and debate for medical historians and costume experts. Some skeletons from the period do show evidence of warp trips, yet others show no damage at all. The consensus seems to be that it depended greatly on how tightly the corset was laced and for how many years it was worn. For you, in this moment, the only evidence is the temporary relief and the angry red marks on your skin. Finally, Elise helps you out of the remaining underthings, the stockings, the garters, until you are standing only in your soft, simple linen chemise, the same garments you started the day in. You have come full circle. The prisoner has been freed from her cell. You feel boneless, wonderfully light. You flop onto a padded chaise lounge, a gesture of pure, unadulterated exhaustion and relief, to be able to slouch, to curl up, to not hold your spine ramrod straight. It is a pleasure so simple and so profound it almost brings tears to your eyes. The silence of the room, broken only by the crackle of the fire in the hearth, is the most beautiful music you have ever heard. You are no longer a duchess, a work of art, a symbol of status. You are just a body, tired and sore, but finally, blessedly, unbound. You lie on the chaise lounge for a few moments, simply reveling in the feeling of being unconstrained. The soft wool of the upholstery feels wonderful against your back. But there is one final act in the ritual of reclaiming your body. Elise approaches, carrying a simple porcelain basin filled with steaming water and a matching pitcher. She places it on a small table beside you. The steam rises in the cool air of the room, carrying with it the clean, sharp scent of the lavender and rosemary she has steeped in it. This, more than any jewel or gown, is the true luxury of your day. She dips a soft linen cloth into the warm water, wrings it out, and hands it to you. The warmth seeps into your hands, and you press the damp cloth to your face. It is a moment of pure, unadulterated bliss. The heat melts away the last of the day's tension. You wipe away the thick layer of white powder, the sticky rouge, the carefully applied silk patches. With each wipe, you feel like you are removing a piece of your mask, revealing the real person underneath. Your skin, which has been suffocating under a layer of makeup all day, tingles as the warm water cleanses it. This makeup, a concoction of white leaden vinegar known as Venetian sea use, is highly fashionable but also notoriously toxic. It's known to cause skin lesions, hair loss, and, over time, severe lead poisoning. It is, quite literally, a beauty that kills. Historians debate how aware people were of these dangers. Some medical texts of the period did warn against the use of lead-based cosmetics, but for many women, the social pressure to have a fashionably pale complexion outweighed the potential health risks. It was a slow, cumulative poison, its effects not always immediately apparent. The quest for a perfect, aristocratic pallor was a dangerous game. After cleansing your face, you dip the cloth in the water again and wash your hands and arms. You scrub at your knuckles, feeling the grime of the day dissolve. To be clean, truly clean, even just in small part, feels like a miracle. You are no longer just covering up the day's realities with perfume. You are washing them away. Elise hands you a small pot of simple, rose-scented cold cream, which you massage into your face and hands. Your skin, dry and irritated from the lead powder, drinks it in gratefully. This is not for show. This is for healing. The amount of water used for this entire ritual is minimal, no more than a few quarts. It's a far cry from a full bath, but its psychological effect is immense. It is a symbolic act of purification, of returning to yourself. It marks the final boundary between the public duchess and the private woman. You think of the fountains outside, still in dark now, the spectacular displays finished for the day, tons and tons of water, sitting inert in the canals and basins. While in here, this small pitcher of warm, herb-scented water feels more precious than the entire waterworks of Versailles. It is water with a purpose, water for comfort, water for a person, not for a spectacle. This contrast between public spectacle and private comfort is a theme that runs through so much of life here. The food served at the grand public dinners, the grand covert, was often elaborate and theatrical, but also famously cold by the time it reached the king's table after its long journey from the kitchens. Many nobles, including the king himself, preferred to eat au petit covert, having simpler, hotter meals served in their private apartments. The same is true for your hygiene. The public image is one of perfumed perfection, a dry clean that masks reality. But the private reality, the true moment of luxury, is this: a small basin of hot water, a soft cloth, and a few moments of quiet solitude. It is a secret, simple pleasure in a world of complex, public demands. As the clean, floral-scented rose cream replaces the heavy musk of your core perfume, you feel the last vestiges of the Duchess fall away. You are finally, completely, yourself again. You are now wearing a simple, loose-fitting nightgown of fine, soft cotton. It feels like a cloud against your skin. The fire crackles softly in the hearth. The only sound in the peaceful silence of your room. Elise has turned down the bed, the clean linen sheets looking impossibly inviting. You slip between them. The coolness of the fabric is a balm on your tired body. You can stretch your legs, curl into a ball, lie in any position you choose. There is no corset to dictate your posture, no heavy gown to weigh you down. This bed, in this quiet room, is the only true place of freedom in the entire palace. You lie on your back and stare up at the canopy above you, its rich velvet fabric lost in the shadows. The day plays back in your mind, not as a sharp, frantic series of events, but as a distant, dream-like montage. The blinding light of the Hall of Mirrors, the crushing weight of the crowd, the desperate search for a corner, the mocking smile of the Duchess de Beaumont, the pale, sick face of your friend, Charlotte. It all seems so absurd from here, from the safety of this bed. The frantic importance of it all just melts away in the quiet darkness. The sights, the anxieties, the triumphs, they were the whole world just a few hours ago. Now, they are just ghosts, flickering images in the embers of your memory. This is the ultimate truth of Versailles. You realize it is a beautiful, magnificent, soul-crushingly uncomfortable trap. It is a stage where you are forced to perform a part you did not choose, in a costume you did not design. It is a place that demands you sacrifice your comfort, your privacy, and sometimes even your health, all for the sake of a fragile, shimmering illusion. The illusion is that you are all demigods, living in a golden heaven on earth. The reality is that you are all just people, trapped together in a beautiful, elaborate, and deeply unsanitary cage, a place where a simple, private bodily function becomes a matter of high drama and existential dread. A place where the scent of 1,000 flowers barely masks the stench of human reality. Historians will one day argue about the legacy of this place. Was it a triumph of art and culture, the pinnacle of absolute monarchy, or was it a monument to obscene excess and folly, a glittering facade that hid the rot at the core of the old regime? Was it a system of political genius that pacified a dangerous nobility, or a dysfunctional pressure cooker that fueled resentment and, eventually, revolution? Lying here, feeling the last of the day's aches in your bones, you suspect the answer is all of the above. It is a masterpiece and a monstrosity, a dream and a nightmare, all at once. You think of the king, sleeping in his own grand bedchamber a few hundred yards away. Is he also just a man, feeling the aches of the day? Or has he so fully merged with his own myth that he no longer feels the bars of the cage? You suspect even he cannot escape the fundamental, human truth of it all. His cage is just larger, and more luxuriously appointed. Your eyelids feel heavy. The warmth of the bed is a siren's call, pulling you down into a deep, welcome darkness. The world of the court, with all its noise and light and pressure, begins to fade. The whispers of gossip, the click of heels on marble, the rustle of silk, it all dissolves into the gentle crackle of the fire. You are drifting now, floating in the quiet space between wake of sorrows and sleep. The Duchess is a faint memory, the corset is a ghost. The only thing that feels real is the softness of the pillow beneath your head and the profound, simple, and hard-won luxury of being alone, at peace, and finally, truly, at rest. The gilded cage can wait until morning. Tonight, you are free. And so, the day ends. not with a grand flourish or a dramatic pronouncement, but with a quiet surrender to the gentle pull of sleep. The great Palace of Versailles, with all its gold and light in its jar, hidden corners, finally recedes. The weight of the brocade gown, the relentless grip of the corset, the anxious whispers behind painted fans, they all begin to dissolve, becoming soft, indistinct, like mist over the Grand Canal at dawn. There is nothing left to do, nothing left to be, except to drift on this quiet, peaceful current, allow the last embers of the day to cool and fade, leaving only the deep, comfortable darkness of a well-earned rest. Let the silence of your room be a soft blanket, wrapping you in stillness and in peace. Our shared time in this story is complete, and if sleep has not yet found you, please don't worry. You can simply rest here in the quiet, or choose another path from my channel. Sleep peacefully. Good night.